Breaking news. Tonight the stage erupts as two voices collide in a confrontation that feels less like a debate and more like a battle for the soul of a nation. On one side stands Zohran Mamdani, a fierce politician with a reputation for challenging corporate power and exposing injustice. On the other side is Knowles, the sharp-tongued conservative commentator known for his biting rhetoric and unyielding defenses of tradition. What began as a moderated discussion explodes into a storm of words, the clash of two ideologies that could not be further apart. Mamdani launches first, his voice trembling, not with fear, but with conviction, rising above the silence of the room. We cannot continue to call ourselves a free society while families are pushed into the streets, while corporations dictate our lives, while justice is denied to the very people who build this country. Freedom without fairness is an illusion. If liberty is only for the wealthy, then it is not liberty at all. The audience gasps at the force of his words, some clapping, others frozen, all aware that this is not going to be a calm conversation. Knowles smirks, leaning into his microphone with the confidence of a man who thrives in firestorms. Zohran, what you call fairness is just another word for control. Redistribution, regulation, intervention. These are the tools of bureaucrats who want to strangle ambition and punish success. You speak of justice, but what you really mean is government deciding who wins and who loses. That is not justice. That is tyranny dressed up in the language of compassion. His tone is cold, biting, each syllable cutting through the tension like a blade. Mamdani refuses to be shaken. His reply comes quickly, a surge of anger wrapped in clarity. Michael, tell me where justice lives in your world. Does it live in boardrooms where decisions are made behind closed doors? Does it live in tax havens where the rich hide their wealth? Or does it live in the neighborhoods where people struggle every day just to survive? Justice cannot be tyranny. It is the antidote to tyranny. What you defend is not liberty, it is privilege. And privilege built on the suffering of others is not freedom, but oppression. The words reverberate through the hall, his voice echoing like thunder across the walls. Knowles doesn't hesitate. He leans forward, his eyes narrowing, and he snaps back with speed. You want to paint privilege as the enemy, but privilege is just the natural reward of success. People work hard, they achieve, they rise, and yes, they earn more. That is not oppression. That is the system working. Tear it down in the name of justice, and you destroy the very foundation of prosperity. His words are quick, fiery, unrelenting. But Mamdani stands tall, his fists clenched, his voice breaking through once more. Prosperity for the few is not prosperity at all. A nation cannot thrive when its people are left behind. What you call the foundation of prosperity, I call a pyramid built on exploitation. A structure doomed to collapse under its own greed. The crowd is divided, the tension rising, the air electric with anticipation. This is more than a clash of opinions. It is a collision of two worlds, and the outcome could redefine everything. The fire inside the studio only grows hotter, every sentence landing like a blow, every counterattack sparking gasps from the crowd. Zohran Mamdani grips the edges of the podium, his voice carrying the weight of entire neighborhoods, echoing with the urgency of communities long ignored. Michael, you speak of ambition as though the poor are lazy, as though those crushed by debt and rent and medical bills have not worked hard enough. But let me tell you this, it is not ambition that fails them. It is the system itself, a system designed to funnel wealth upward, a system that celebrates billionaires while children go hungry, a system that calls itself free, but enslaves millions through poverty. His voice trembles with fury and compassion at once, the audience leaning forward, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Knowles does not back down. He answers with calm precision, a smirk flickering across his face as though he has been waiting for this very moment. And yet, Zohran, what you describe is not failure of freedom, but the reality of life. Inequality exists because talent, effort, and risk are not the same for everyone. That is the truth people do not want to hear. The wealthy do not steal their riches. They create value, they build businesses, they take risks no one else will take. Without them, there would be no jobs, no growth, no opportunity. Your so-called justice punishes the very people who keep society afloat. His words are smooth, cutting, cold, like steel slicing through the air. The audience murmurs, some nodding, some shaking their heads, but no one looks away. Mamdani slams back, his tone rising to a thunderclap. And what happens, Michael, when those very businesses you praise exploit workers, pay starvation wages, and leave families desperate? What happens when profit comes at the expense of human dignity? Do you call that opportunity? Do you call that freedom? No, that is not liberty. It is exploitation dressed up as achievement. If this is the system you defend, then it is broken beyond repair. The hall shudders with the force of his words, the tension so thick it feels like a storm about to break. Knowles raises his hand slightly, silencing the murmurs, his voice steady, almost mocking. You call it exploitation, I call it reality. Work is hard, life is unfair, and yet people rise. They rise not because government hands them equality, but because they fight, they struggle, they climb. That is human nature, that is ambition, that is the fire of liberty. The more you interfere, the more you weaken that spirit. What you call justice is the death of freedom itself. His declaration explodes into the silence, and for a moment the crowd holds its breath. Mamdani leans forward, his voice breaking through like a wave crashing against a cliff. And what you call liberty is simply the right of the strong to trample the weak. If we leave people to climb alone while the ladder is broken, they will never rise. True freedom is not the absence of justice. It is justice made real. Until every person has the chance to live with dignity, liberty is only a word used by the privileged to protect their power. The studio feels electrified. The cameras zoom in on their faces, the sweat glistening under the lights, the rage visible in their eyes. This is no longer just argument. It is a war of visions. One side insisting freedom alone is survival, the other demanding that justice is the soul of freedom. And the audience knows, watching with breathless intensity, that the fire has only just begun. The storm inside the studio is now unstoppable. The clash between Zohran Mamdani and Michael Knowles escalating into something that feels less like debate and more like destiny unfolding live before the world. The audience sits frozen, not a whisper, not a cough, only the thunder of words clashing across the stage. Mamdani's voice rises again, not hurried but heavy with conviction, each sentence pounding like a drumbeat echoing through the hall. Michael, the truth is that freedom without fairness is not freedom at all. You celebrate inequality as though it is a natural fact of life, but inequality on this scale is manufactured, protected, and enforced. The poor are not poor because they lack ambition. They are poor because systems were designed to keep them down. Redlining, tax loopholes, broken schools, predatory corporations. This is not freedom. It is oppression hiding in plain sight. His words slice deep into the silence, each one a strike of fire. The crowd erupts briefly before falling silent again, waiting for Knowles to respond. And he does, his tone razor sharp, eyes gleaming with challenge. Zohran, you see oppression everywhere because you choose to. Life is unfair, yes, but government cannot fix human nature. No law can guarantee equal outcomes, and every time we try, we destroy opportunity for all. You want to talk about systems? The system that built skyscrapers, that invented medicine, that created wealth unimaginable a century ago. That system is capitalism, and it thrives because of freedom, not fairness. Tear it down in the name of justice, and you tear down the very foundation of civilization. His words hit hard, the studio echoing with the rhythm of his conviction. Mamdani clenches his fist, his face intense, his tone rising like a flame spreading it uncontrollably. And what of the skyscrapers that cast shadows over the homeless? What of the medicines that the sick cannot afford? What of the wealth built on the suffering of workers who never see the fruits of their labor? If this is the civilization you defend, then it is already crumbling. Justice is not the enemy of freedom. It is its completion. Without justice, freedom is nothing but the right of the strong to exploit the weak. His words crash over the hall like a tidal wave, leaving a stunned hush in their wake. Knowles leans forward, refusing to yield, his voice faster now, sharper, cutting through the stillness. No, Zohran, what you propose is not justice, it is envy institutionalized. You want to punish success because you resent it. You want to flatten society until everyone is the same. But sameness is not dignity, it is mediocrity. You speak of fairness, but what you really want is control. And once government has that control, it never gives it back. That is the road to tyranny, and I will never defend it. His voice booms like cannon fire, but Mamdani strikes back immediately, eyes blazing, his voice shaking with fury. And I will never defend a system that lets children starve while billionaires launch rockets into space. I will never defend a society where profit is valued more than people. True dignity is not in mediocrity. It is in humanity, in recognizing that we rise together or we fall apart. If freedom does not lift us all, then it is not freedom. It is a lie. The studio gasps, the words hanging in the air like smoke after an explosion. The clash has reached a fever pitch, two visions colliding with such ferocity that the line between argument and war blurs. And the audience knows, breathless and shaken, that this conflict is far from finished. The storm is still gathering. The tension in the studio is unbearable now, the lights glaring down like spotlights on a battlefield. Every breath of the audience sharp, every movement amplified by the weight of history pressing on this moment. Zohran Mamdani grips the microphone as though channeling not only his own voice, but the cries of those who have been silenced for generations. His tone trembles with controlled fury, every word loaded with fire. Michael, you keep speaking as if freedom alone is enough, as if liberty can survive while millions are crushed under poverty and despair. But what you call liberty is just the freedom of corporations to exploit, the freedom of landlords to evict, the freedom of billionaires to hoard wealth while ordinary families fight to survive. That is not liberty. It is legalized cruelty. Justice is not an obstacle to freedom. It is the only thing that makes freedom real. His words echo like thunder, the crowd erupting, then falling silent in awe. Michael Knowles leans back, his expression sharp, his tone calm but cutting, like a blade pressed against glass. Zohran, your rhetoric is dramatic, but reality is harder than your dreams. The so-called justice you demand comes at the cost of freedom itself. Redistribution, regulation, intervention, these are chains, not solutions. You may cloak them in compassion, but they suffocate ambition. They destroy innovation, and they turn every citizen into a subject of government power. That is not compassion. That is control. His words pierce the room, cold and merciless, and the audience murmurs in divided tones. Mamdani does not retreat. His eyes flash, his voice rising like a storm breaking over the horizon. And what do you call the control corporations already have? What do you call the manipulation of wages, the crushing of unions, the flooding of politics with money that silences ordinary voices? Is that not control? Is that not tyranny? You fear government power, but you ignore corporate power that dictates our very lives. Justice means breaking those chains. Justice means giving the powerless the tools to fight back. The hall shudders with the ferocity of his words, some standing to applaud, others shaking their heads, but no one looking away. Knowles slams back with icy precision, his words firing like bullets. Corporate power exists because people choose it. They buy, they invest, they participate. Government force is not choice, it is coercion. You blur the lines on purpose, Zohran, because your vision requires control. But control breeds dependence, and dependence breeds weakness. Freedom is hard, freedom is unfair, but freedom is the only path to strength. His words are crisp, relentless, his pace quickening as though trying to overwhelm the very air. Mamdani strikes back instantly, his voice booming, his tone raw, his sentences heavy with emotion. No, Michael, freedom without justice is the greatest weakness of all. A nation that abandons its people is not strong, it is broken. A society that values profit above dignity is not free, it is enslaved to greed. True strength is not the survival of the fittest, it is the survival of us all together. That is the freedom I fight for. That is the justice that cannot wait. The crowd gasps, the energy vibrating like a storm ready to break the walls. Cameras zoom closer, catching every drop of sweat, every flicker of rage, every moment of conviction. This is not just a debate, it is a reckoning, a war of visions, an earthquake shaking the foundations of politics itself. And though both men stand tall, neither willing to break, everyone watching knows one truth. This storm has not yet reached its peak. The storm has reached its breaking point. The studio air heavy with the weight of words that feels sharper than any weapon. The audience sitting frozen as though witnessing not just a debate, but the unraveling of history itself. Zohran Mamdani stands tall, his chest heaving, his voice booming with fury and compassion fused together into a force impossible to ignore. Michael, you claim to defend freedom, but what you defend is a world where the powerful remain powerful and the powerless remain voiceless. You defend a system that calls exploitation opportunity, that names greed ambition, that disguises cruelty as liberty. I refuse to accept that definition of freedom. True freedom is when justice lives in every home, when dignity is not reserved for the privileged, when no child is denied the future because their family was born poor. If freedom does not serve the many, then it is not freedom. It is oppression, painted gold. The hall trembles under the thunder of his words, the crowd erupting in applause, some shouting, some crying, the raw emotion impossible to contain. Michael Knowles narrows his eyes, his reply striking like ice against fire, his words measured but merciless. Zohran, your passion is clear, but passion does not change reality. The world is unequal because people are unequal, different in talent, different in drive, different in risk. You can legislate fairness, you can enforce redistribution, but what you create is not justice, it is dependency. A society built on forced equality is not strong, it is weak, and it will collapse under the weight of its own illusions. History proves this. Every time your vision has been tried, it has ended in ruin. His voice cuts through the hall, cold and final, like a gavel striking down. But Mamdani does not yield. He steps forward, his voice roaring like a storm unleashed. And every time greed has ruled unchecked, Michael, it has ended in ruin too. Collapsed economies, broken nations, societies torn apart because a few held too much, while the many held too little. Do not pretend that inequality is nature. It is policy, it is choice, it is design. And if it is design, then it can be changed. Justice is not dependency. Justice is balance. Justice is the promise that freedom must belong to all, or it is nothing. His words ignite the room, the tension at its peak, the crowd gasping, cameras flashing, the energy almost unbearable. Knowles leans in one final time, his tone low but fierce, each word landing like a strike. And when you hand that power to government, Zohran, when you let bureaucrats decide balance, when you let politicians define fairness, you invite tyranny. You fear corporations, I fear the state. And between the two, the state is far more dangerous. Liberty is fragile, but it is the only shield against oppression. Without liberty, justice dies too. The silence that follows is deafening, the two men locked in a stare that feels eternal. Neither one yielding, neither one broken. The audience knows there will be a clear victor tonight. Only the undeniable truth that two visions of the future have collided and the shockwaves will echo for years. The broadcast fades, but the question remains, haunting, unresolved, carved into the minds of millions who watched. When the future arrives, will it be liberty that survives or justice that prevails?